Welcome to the Ketogeek Podcast. Let's do this.
Health, nutrition, fitness, low-carb lifestyle.
Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Ketogeek Podcast. Corey, man, we are swarmed and busy, aren't we?
Every day, all day.
Working 16 hours a day, going back in time using Doctor Strange's time stone. It's crazy. How are you today?
I'm doing pretty good. How about you?
I'm doing fantastic. It's going to be a fun joyride of a podcast coming up, and we would just like to notify everybody before we get into it that we are sponsored by a company called Ketogeek. Do you want to tell people what Ketogeek actually does?
Ketogeek is a multi-pronged company. We do a podcast. We have an awesome website full of tons of information that is easy to digest, as well as our own food product. We call it the Energy Pod.
Oh, yeah. Energy Pods. For those who are new to our show, the Energy Pods are basically these high-fat food products that we initially made it for ourselves, but we decided to share with other human beings, and it became so popular that they just wanted to buy it from us, and we started to get sold out. In fact, we're sold out right now as we speak, and so if you're looking for the best keto-friendly food products in the universe, please go to ketogeek.com and buy our Energy Pods. We actually also have some ghee over there that you can also purchase that we make ourselves as well. We do not ever cut corners when it comes to ingredients and the science behind our products. So if you're one of those people who does not like to compromise on health, then we're in the same boat. We will throw scientific studies at you. The good kinds. There's actually some really bad studies out there too. Like, for example, some of the epidemiological and observational studies are insane. They make no sense whatsoever. And anybody who's been listening to our show for quite some time know exactly what these observational studies are all about. So anyway, do you have anything else to add, Corey?
Not at the moment.
All right, so let's talk about something that we have been thinking for some time. By the way, real quick, we will be opening up our wholesale system in a few days from the launch of this podcast. So if you're hearing this and you would like to sell our products, please shoot us an email or check out the link in the podcast description. And if you want to buy our products in bulk as well, you can go over there. And this is going to pave the way towards international shipping. A lot of Canadians are interested in buying the Energy Pods. So finally, we're going to get to that country. I'm waiting till they start sending us death threats. I think that would be the moment where we just do it.
They're getting a little aggressive, to be honest. They're just they're going at it every single day. Like, ship to Canada, ship to Canada, ship to Canada. It's no longer can you ship to Canada. It is ship to Canada.
Yeah, it was adorable at start, but now I'm afraid. Now I can't sleep at night because I'm so afraid. But so that's going to be really cool. Our new flavor, the salted mocha, is going to be out probably later in June. We've started doing some prototyping and testing and sharing it with some people. It's pretty awesome. Another thing that we wanted to bring on to Ketogeek, did we talk about the Ketogeek membership on our last show? Do you remember?
I don't remember. Perhaps this is the first time that people are hearing about it.
Okay, so if this is the first time, then let's treat it like it's first time.
Yeah.
We're terrible, don't we? Forget everything. But yeah, so the Ketogeek membership will be something that we want to implement at Ketogeek. So if you go to ketogeek.com right now, there's now a membership section that practically has a sign-up on it. So what our goal with that membership plan is to incorporate different kinds of courses, training styles, product discounts, store rewards, all of these things. Combine the information side of the business and the product side of the business and conversion to something. So the goal, initially, we wanted to create just food products. But now we've realized that in order to fix a lot of these chronic conditions in the world, we need to treat human beings as a ship, not a tiny little boat.
Yep.
In a boat, a big ship that has many crew members on it, meaning that there's so many factors that influence how we become in the society, what kind of foods we eat. So the Ketogeek membership will be a journey, a place or a haven where a lot of you guys can come in, learn about new workout routines, learn from some of your favorite teachers, and explore some new areas. You'll be on the same page with us, and I will be so interested as well. Every time some new teacher is going to come out, I'm going to do all of these plans and courses together with you guys. What do you think, Corey?
It sounds like a fantastic idea, and I'm really excited to bring this on board. People deserve the best, and that's what Ketogeek strives to do. We want to just talk to the best people out there, the best influencers, the best researchers, and have them on board with us so we can give them easy access to you.
And some of the doctors and nurses had pointed at this out. Some of the physicians have pointed out that they would like to find a place where they can refer some of their patients to, where they can easily understand what a ketogenic diet is, and so they can begin their journey there. So make it something that's really dummy-proof. And so that will be our goal as well. So the Ketogeek membership, I'm really excited. We don't have a specific launch date yet, but once we get the ball rolling, you guys will be the first to know. If you go to ketogeek.com/sign up in general, if you sign up for our newsletter, you will get access to the information. If you're a little bit more greedy, just go to the membership. There's tons of, just sign up anywhere and you'll get to access all the latest information about Ketogeek. Do we have any sales coming up?
I think we're going to be doing a sale on something that is in large surplus right now. Pecan coconuts.
He just made that up, by the way, didn't he? Didn't you?
Sure.
Oh, yeah. All right, so pecan coconut, we're going to bring that on the sale, so if you guys are holding to your horses, we'll let you know on all of our social media platforms and everywhere, basically. So I think that's all it is as far as some of the house cleaning at Ketogeek is concerned. Do you have anything else you want to add here?
Not at the moment.
All right, guys and gals, we are swarmed and busy and crazy. This podcast is going to be with Peter BILARCZYK. He actually explained to me how to pronounce that name on the description that I had in front of me, or the scheduling description. Guys, I'm losing my mind here. So there's two different kinds of approaches that are mainstream as far as losing fat or body recomposition. There's that high protein approach and there's this high fat approach. So they both work based on my observation and conversations. I think the battle is mostly where the protein lies and of course where the fat lies as well. So, but the common theme in both of these protocols, as far as body recomposition or fat loss is concerned, is you're still restricting calories. Now, the ketogenic diet makes it easier to restrict those calories because it gives you a lot of appetite suppression, your hunger levels go down substantially, eventually they might come back up, but the powerful aspect about the ketogenic or a low-carb diet as well is it gives you a really strong grip on your appetite. You don't feel hungry much compared to the high sugar days. Mm-hmm. So this is a wonderful conversation, and we also talk a lot about the athletics of how to perform really well on a ketogenic diet as well. So ladies and gentlemen, without further ado, let me bring to you this podcast I had with Peter BILARCZYK.
Yeah, Central New Jersey, a little town called Red Bank, which is very cool. Like if you're a comic book geek, the comic book guys are here. Jay and Silent Bob, their Silent Stash. They filmed Dogma and all those other shows here. Bruce Springsteen's at my gym every morning at 9:30 working out, which is really. You can't be the coolest guy in the gym when Bruce Springsteen's there working out. It gets a little difficult.
Hey, I think you're pretty much one of the coolest people that I know, especially with the role that you play in the keto community and how you're educating people, a lot of people with a lot of misconception that's going on with the keto sphere. But comic books? Dude, comics. Are you into comics?
Well, it's odd. I grew up that way, but I kind of got out of it, and I think the expense comes along with it. The expense, and then my dad losing my comic book collection that was in his storage. That that just kills everything. All my classic comics, all my action comics, they're all gone. But I'm now with all the superhero phase that's coming out, I can't get enough Black Panther and all that stuff.
Did you see the Infinity Wars?
Yeah, that's. Like I don't want to blow it up for anybody, but man, what a dismal ending.
But I kind of like it because one of the messages that we kind of promote here is grounding yourself in reality. And even though you should have idealistic goals, you should be realistic about them at the same time. So I kind of got a little bit of a taste of that in that movie. So no spoilers here. Check it out if you haven't. But you know what? Let's get back to our keto sort of related podcast. So let's start with your journey into the keto world. What happened? How did you get introduced into this lifestyle? Go on.
Sure. Yeah. So, I've always been a athletic person. I was a 5-year-old martial artist, grew up in Taekwondo school, basically, switched over to Kung Fu at some point, lived in an Aikido school. So I was always for about good 30 years a martial artist. And, that meant if you weren't throwing up in the bucket in the corner of the room and really putting in your all and, almost dehydrating yourself, to the degree where like, oh, you're going to drink water in between classes, wimp. And, we grew up with all those misconceptions of what will train us better and make us stronger. But in order to keep up, drinking gallons and gallons of Gatorade, eating loads and loads of carbohydrates, and basically eating 3 to 4 times the amount of what a normal person should while running, training, lifting weights. And, at some point when I hit 30, everything changed. The stuff that I used to do that would work stopped. And I tried every fad underneath the sky, from the old cybergenics of the world to the versions of 24-hour diets. And then that just kept on continuing to wreck me, until the point that I said, okay, what do I need to do different? So now I'm listening to a radio show local to me called Opie and Anthony. It's one of those shock jockish style things, a little bit better than that, but kind of the locker room humor. And they had Vinny Tortorich on from NSNG fame. And everything that he said, it's like, I know this, but nobody ever really packaged it up that way by saying, we need to embrace this type of food. We need to watch this. This is what's causing the hunger. This is what's, causing like those hormones to just get a little bit crazy and make the journey not easy. So taking that and, having to research it myself over 3 years, it took me about 6 months to drop a good 60 to 70 pounds, running up to 60 miles a week, 2,000 miles a year. Then to realize that I was doing things wrong. I was doing some damage to my body by upping my fat to such a high level, decreasing my protein down to such a low level, because the podcasters of the day were saying, hey, protein, you have to fear that. It's going to turn into sugar. And then, in addition, when you're running that type of mileage, not eating back the right amount of carbohydrate as a supplement, to replenish your glycogen use for the intensity I was running. So then I came out the other side and changed into a lifter. I've had to put running on the shelf. It kind of impacted my system a little bit from what I was doing carbohydrate wise. It took me almost a year to recover from that, and then got into some heavy lifting. And here I am now, maybe 20 pounds heavier, working on body recomposition. And as we talk today, it's been my 4th month with a coaching service that now I've been teaching people how to do that one-on-one, where the past 2 to 3 years I've been doing it in the Fat Adapted Athlete group with thousands of people. Just kind of took that knowledge and the testing from those guys and brought it over to my world.
Okay, fantastic. And you're also on Facebook. How did that journey begin?
Yeah, so, the Facebook, I actually started with a group. It was called something like Friends of Pete Workout Club, which was a take on the Friends of Bill W., the Alcoholics Anonymous. And this was the place where everybody would go and, complain about their workout or how hungry that they were or what wasn't working or what poundage that they gained. And, that was probably the first 2 years of it. And then actually switched to the Ketogenic Athlete and then gave up that name. I think Brian from his group took that. And I decided to go with the Fat Adapted Athlete because it summed things up. I wasn't looking for people to embrace being in ketosis, even though that's nice and you can do that. I wasn't looking for people to be super low carb in the traditional fashion, because it's about finding the right amount of quality carbohydrate, the minimum dosage necessary, so to speak. And I wasn't about high fat or low fat. I was about finding the right fat for the journey that you're on. If you're a couple hundred pounds and, maybe you don't need as much fat. If you're 300 pounds and you're carrying around a 100-pound kid on your back, maybe you need a little bit more fat to keep you satiated and keep you nice. And then on the other side, if you're an athlete, I was drinking over about 2,000 calories of fat just to keep up with the not having energy loss when I was running at capacity. And, a lot of the ultra runners that we train, and that's really what that group has evolved into, being more of a runner and cyclist group. But the guys that are putting in 100-mile runs and all that, they have to truly embrace the fat, make sure to get the right numbers in there, or else they're just going to wither away. They're not carrying enough on their body.
What kind of athletic endeavors do you take part in, and what's your training style like?
Yeah, so I started off, again, a lot of running, and kind of, they're running 12 to 14 hours a week. There was no time left to lift. All I was doing was training for marathons and ultras, and a good year to a year and a half ago now, I put that up on the shelf, and now it's just really body recomposition. So I'm at the gym 5-6 days a week. I limit cardio to a degree that I don't get hungry. It seems the more cardio that I do, the more that my body wants and craves back some of those sugars. Splitting up my body parts on a regular basis to basically go through a 3-day cycle. Keeping in that range where I'm hitting each body part for about a half hour to make it grow, and it seems to be doing the job. I've been putting on muscle at a good steady rate, even at a slight deficit. I try to most of the time stay at about a 15% deficit so that I'm leaning out. Now I'm in a lean out stage. I'm going to kind of working on this for the next 8 weeks, and then when I get back from vacation, then I'm going to go into a bulk up where I'm going to be eating probably at about 20% surplus to try to put on some additional muscle, make it easier. So
during your weight training, so you've limited cardio. Is there a specific reason why you've kind of cut it down a little bit?
So yeah, I limit my cardio down to a math level. So, I'm 49. I try to keep my heart rate under 131 beats, and that kind of optimizes the fat, the amount of fat that I'm using. And, when I explain it out to clients, they're like, well, no, shouldn't I be going heavier and harder so that I burn more fat? And you got to realize you can only force so many fat cars on those fat pathways, that fat highway. So we can better the upregulation of fatty acids into the muscle. Guys like Zach Bitter, these like super runners that are out there, from the faster study, I think they were up in like the 2 grams per minute range of fat or up high, where the carbohydrate guys were about a half. But once you get to that point, me running at 131 beats a minute, that's the maximum amount of fat that I can process. Then glycogen has to kick in. And then from there, it's all just, that fat is still running in the background, but now that glycogen is picking up all the loose ends that I'm not carrying. So it seems that whenever I'm low and slow, I'm burning a lot of fat. When I'm going higher than that, I don't burn fat at a faster rate. I just start to introduce carbohydrates that I'm not eating back at a heavy level. So I try to avoid that. It always seems to get me hungry.
Is that a switch, or is that just a transitional slow period? What do you think?
So, there's a lot smarter guys than me in the fat adapted athlete group. And, when I listen to guys like Peter Defty speak about it, there's another guy, Richard Carlson, in the group that really goes into great detail. Mike Julian, all the names. I think you've had half these guys on. These guys break it down that they're stages, in the same way that if you just get out to a straight full-on sprint, you're going to go straight into sugar burning mode because the body kicks in for that emergency fight or flight. It's going to high octane. However, if you warm up slowly over 10 to 15 minutes, then you allow that fat engine to come online. That kind of runs, and then I can tell you from personal experience at about the 40-minute mark of running, your heart rate drops down, your pace picks up a little bit. Then you really lock in that fat burning mode, and then you can start fueling. At that point, all the sugars in the world are not going to pull you out of that fat burning mode. All they're going to do is just supply the additional glycogen that you're using.
Okay. So if I'm new to running or any sort of athletic endeavor at all, and I think you also have a group for those people, how do I begin managing how do I begin this journey? Should I start with fat adaptation? Should I go back to sort of like a ketogenic low carb approach and then keep going from that point onward? What infrastructure should I build?
This is what kills half of the members in the group. So when they come in, they say, hey, I want to do this. I got a race coming up in 4 weeks and I want to jump in. And it's like, man, you need go back to the art and science of low carbohydrate performance, Finney and Volek, and they have it mapped out that it takes a good 4 to 6 weeks to get out of the what we call the embrace the suck range of it, where everything's just going to be terrible. Then when you get into the 6 to 8, you can start to get some performance increase after 8 weeks. 8 to 12 is really when you can start putting up some PRs. So it takes getting those carbohydrates down low, getting acclimated to it, getting your electrolytes rebalanced, because that's always the hardest part. Everybody that comes to us that says, my carbohydrates suck, I can't do this, I need to have them because I'm a special kind of runner and you don't know me, my body works for me. It's like, no, you just need to increase your electrolytes. Your magnesium's off, that's why you're cramping. Your potassium's off, that's why you're not hydrating the right way. Your salt is off, that's why you're dizzy and you're getting stunned on the runs.
So yeah, a lot of new people do get into a lot of misconception about the ketogenic diet, and I think one of the ones that we both like to hammer on is the unlimited amount of fat myth that exists, which seems to work in short-term studies, but in the bigger picture, it actually causes weight gain. And so I think you might have noticed the same trend, correct?
Yeah, so that's one of my own personal plates, and what we were constantly putting out there is that there's a difference between therapeutic ketosis and nutritional ketosis. When you're overweight, and as I said earlier, if you're carrying a 100-pound kit on your back, you walk around all day, you're going to be tired. And that's what happens to somebody that's overweight. They're going to be burning a lot more calories than somebody that's underweight. On the other side, if you're an athlete and you're doing a lot of high level exertion, you can eat all the fat in the world, just burn that up. It's about energy needs. In the big picture, calories matter, but also hormonal balance matters, macro choices matter, nutrient density matters. So, it's like driving the car at 70 miles an hour. You get your energy balance right, you're going to lose weight. If you're eating a little bit less energy than what you're burning, your weight's going to drop. But what winds up happening is the car is still stuck in first gear and you're whining out the engine and it's going to blow up and everything just falls apart. That's what eating, in my world, eating, the higher fat, which is just a little bit less of that insulin impact, works for you, and lowering all the inflammatory foods and, making sure to get your energy balance, the protein ratios right, and that gets the car into fourth gear.
Yes, and I tell this to a lot of the people that are close to me, the same thing, that if you're going to be stuck watching Netflix at home, no amount of diet is going to save you from the caloric load that you're bringing in. No ketogenic diet, no low carb, no paleo, nothing is going to save that. So for people that have an active lifestyle, for them, like you were saying, you start burning and crashing, and for you, a high energy food might be really good for you. And then the thing is, there's a lot of confusion in the ketosphere as well. And for example, another one is the exogenous ketones, and that's been pretty much, everybody agrees now that it stalls fat loss as well. So are there any other misconceptions that you have heard in the ketosphere that need to be brought out? You might have noticed in your clients that they need to be aware of?
Where do we start, man? I'm constantly battling the Instagrammers, and I love these. I love when these Memorial Day comes around because everybody comes out with a sale, so it's easy to just start deleting all the exogenous ketone people, the hair weaves, the wraps, and it's even Dr. Dominic D'Agostino said that his product is not for weight loss. It's for, there is some value. I mean, it's not throwing the baby out with the bathwater. If you're doing some high altitude training, or if you're training Navy SEALs that got to get in there quicker because there's some need, but we're not talking salts. We're talking, good quality esters that can actually get you there. Most of the people that will take an exogenous ketone from the beginning, what they're feeling is their electrolyte balancers are off. So now they're taking salts. All of a sudden they feel better and they feel the surge of energy. And it's like, no, you think it's that, but it's your value is coming from something else, that and loading up with caffeine. For me, on my side, it's mostly been the protein battle. Everybody feels that protein automatically turns into sugar, and that's just a misconception caused by, what a type 1 diabetic sees with, raises in their blood sugar, which is really a cause from glucagon releasing to help amino acids get upregulated into the muscle. So it's one thing seems like another. That very small insulin raise is really nothing in the big picture of things. Gluconeogenesis happens at a set rate. You can't force it in faster because you eat excess of it. So it's pulled in on an emergency basis, which this is what I learned. I was talking to you before the show a little bit. So now I'm running 60 miles a week. I'm keeping myself almost carnivore, where I'm in the 5 to 10 to maybe 15 grams of carb range, and my body, and I'm running at about 20 beats over my aerobic function, which is threshold. That means that I'm burning about 50% fat and 50% glucose on glycogen on these runs. My body has to replenish that. So now it's in a constant circle of replenishing by pulling proteins over, combining it with lactate and stripping the glycerol backbone off of a fat cell, and then making sugar from that. But what they leave out is that it's a very thermic effect, a very thermic process. So that's great, but it's also a very cortisol-inducing process. You create a lot of stress. It's an emergency process. Anytime the body has an emergency process, it can do without carbohydrates. It doesn't mean that it doesn't want to have, that carbohydrate coming in to replenish. So you create loads and loads of stress. And now I'm bathing myself in cortisol. I was doing HRV training, heart rate variability. So I was checking that, and the strap said that I was always stressed. And I was like, yeah, that's because I'm running. I'm an athlete. I'm supposed to be stressed. But meanwhile, I put myself into such an overtrained stress place that my testosterone started to take a dip. Now I'm crying at movies, until I had to say, okay, you know what? Shelf the running, start eating back the right amount of carbohydrates, which for me was more in that 30 to 50 range, just bringing it up a little bit, quality sources, not doing Halo Top ice creams and, Brussels sprouts and, getting, some quality yogurt, some good fermentables. By bringing that up, and over the course of a year, recovered my numbers naturally by lifting heavy, getting a lot of squats in, and being cautious with how I abuse my body. I was putting it through a lot of abuse, and I don't know whether that's going to be what everybody else's journey is, but I know that, from 5 years old, I was putting in 3 hours a day consistently worth of working out at, going through, like a kid gymnast. You just like beat yourself up until your body can't take it anymore. My threshold of taking it kind of dropped over a period of time.
So what about fast absorbing fats, for example, MCT oil? Are there advantages to that?
Yeah. So again, it depends if we're talking about the athlete or we're talking about the dieter.
Athlete.
MCT. Yep.
Athlete.
Yeah. For MCT, for the athlete, it's great. It bypasses most of the processes. It hits straight to the liver, creates ketones. You get ketones, makes your brain happy. Makes, supplies the organs, everything's good. But we have to understand that, ketones don't fuel the muscles. Fatty acids fuel the muscles. So it's about getting, that quick source is great. But, when people are constantly testing their ketone levels, that's not directly related to your ability to burn more fat or to get more fat upregulated into the muscle tissue. You have 3 different types of muscle tissue in your body. Only one can use ketones.
Okay. Yeah, you know what? Let's pry on that. What's that muscle? What's up with that?
Yeah, so you basically have like the muscle that's found in organs, which is one type of muscle tissue that can use it. Skeletal muscle can't. Ketones are made to pass the blood-brain barrier. That's the only reason that they're really made. But then they also, are an emergency function for some of the organs. But our muscles, our skeletal muscle uses fatty acids, and within the skeletal muscle, there's your red fiber and your white, your fast twitch and your slow twitch. So you have the 2 different there. But that's where fatty acids gets used. It's you can't use ketones in the muscle. Most people don't know that. And keep in mind, I'm not a scientist, but I have a lot of scientist friends, and we have these guys over at the Fat Adapted Athlete Group, and that's where we put out all the documentation, all the studies, all the biology. And this is really something that can be pulled out of any biology book.
Okay, so the next question would be ketone testing, man. Is there any relevance to that, or is it just too much work, or what's the significance of that? Let's compare both the dietitian and also the athlete.
I have fun with it. I don't do much testing anymore, but I was doing the ketonics breath, and I was doing in correlation to my blood, and then seeing what would happen if I, with my pee strips, and just understanding each one tests a different type of ketone for the body. And, some are important, some aren't. Like what we're breathing out is pretty important. That tells us what we're oxidizing. What we're peeing out can easily be increased just because we ate extra dietary fat. It's ketones that our body doesn't have any storage mechanism. for ketones. So if we make them and our body doesn't use them, it's just going to pee them out. And that will happen by eating excessive amounts of fat above and beyond your energy needs. The way that we really want to try to have it happen is, giving ourselves the right amount of fat, quality fat, so that, the body has that backup of energy so that it doesn't have to pull it all from our body. I go back again to the art and science of low carbohydrate performance. Finney and Volek really had this right, but they chaptered off the book kind of interesting. And when you look at what they said, we need about 70% to 75% of our energy coming from fat. They didn't say eating it. They said that that's how much should be used. Now, that could be 50% from dietary and 20% from the body. But if we start to go too much from the body, it kind of creates that metabolic dysfunction and makes us like slow down, get a little bit tired. So we want to avoid that. That's why we need good sources coming in. But we want to force our body to use its optimal amount.
So here would be a fun question: is stored body fat oxidized better in certain ways compared to dietary fat?
Yeah, you bypass a process, and it really comes down to, that's the reason why a lot of people like to use MCT oil, because that's just a very fast converting fat. Same thing as doing like a high fructose corn syrup. It bypasses the blood, goes straight to the liver, and releases, so that you get that fast surge of energy with things like that. Simpler, very super simple sugars. Same thing with fat. When it's a very simple fat, it can bypass all the systems and basically get out there for energy. When we talk about fat on the body, it removes probably the most difficult part of the process for most runners, most cyclists, which is the stomach. We don't want fat or in heavy amounts in our stomach that our body now has to divert blood to digest, versus the blood which really needs to go to cooling our skin if it's hotter out, or helping us move oxygen around.
Okay, so this brings us to an interesting sort of pyramid method, fueling method. So what I'm thinking here is you have at the bottom of the pyramid the stored body fat. In the middle you have stuff like MCT oils, and then on top you would have something like dextrose or some fast-absorbing carb. So would that be a good analogy to sort of use here?
Yeah, I haven't tried the dextrose fueling methods, and I know Ketogains is
they're huge about that.
Yeah, and they're smart. They got the science backing it, and there's a value. For a little while, I tried out. There's Salt Sticks makes a chewable electrolyte with dextrose, and it wasn't even anywhere near the dosage that they were saying. And if you're metabolically flexible, you should be able to utilize fat and sugar. But once you eliminate sugars from your diet or complex carbohydrates to such a great degree, your body downregulates those systems. So you don't become as efficient as processing the sugar. So it's important to, I don't want to tell people to play around. It depends on what stage you're in. If your stage is dieting, remove the one fuel source you don't need, which is the carbohydrates, lower it down. Drop your workouts to be in the low and slow, so that you're not exerting into these really, high levels for a good 80% of your workout. And then maybe 20% you do some HIIT training. There's great studies that show you can develop better mitochondrial function. There's a lot of value and benefit to that. But keep it contained, so that this way as I continue to go back, your body will trigger you to be hungrier for sugars with those higher levels, or hungrier for more food. Back to what you were saying. So the hierarchy of how we burn things, up at the top is alcohol and sugar alcohol. So there's no storage mechanism, along with exogenous ketones. Those all need to be burnt off before we can touch anything else. Then we have to go to, there's a small amino acid pool in our blood, maybe 100 calories. So that's why I recommend people don't eat protein 6 or 7 times a day, because you still have to burn that off if it's not already going to the brain or doing whatever it needs to do, going into the muscle, wherever it has to flow. And then we can get down to carbohydrates that we ate. Then we can get down to fats that we ate. So there's a lot in the way. So as much as we can remove, if, again, body recomposition is our goal, we want to remove those things. I just want to make one other note. The beauty of fueling in the middle of a run, I said earlier, once you get into that 40 to 45 minute range, your fat engine is kind of locked in there, and you really can't knock it out. And what I mean by that is that you can start fueling with sugar probably about an hour, hour and a half, and it doesn't take insulin now to get the glycogen into the cell. It actually uses GLUT4 to to miraculously just move it into the cell. So you're not getting the insulin rise, which isn't dropping down the amount of fat that can be oxidized. So you can basically be metabolically flexible to use both sources at the same time.
Okay, fantastic. We could totally nerd out about this for hours and hours and days. So let's sort of start getting to the basics. And let's say I am new to the ketogenic diet. What do I do? Where do I even begin?
Yeah, so, what I tell everybody is you can bypass, if you have a goal in mind, you should track everything. I track your macros, throw it into MyFitnessPal ahead of time, get the right numbers. I have them on the website. You can go there, you can download a little form that tells you foods to eat and what your macro percentages should be. But that does get complicated, and it's not always necessary. At its simplest is get some sort of meat or eggs, and that's how we get our fat. We get our fat attached to that. And then use some sort of butter and oil to, I don't want to say the bare minimums, but the bare minimum for you to prepare that food and have it not taste terrible. That's why we use fat. It helps increase the taste. So we're leading with protein. We're getting the fat as the backbone for satiety. Even though, a lot of studies show how, satiating protein is, fat and protein mixed together tend to be that magic combination. I can eat a pound of chicken breast, but it's easier to eat a pound of chicken thighs. That extra bit of fat really helps the process. And to do that 2 to 3 times a day, eat when hungry, don't eat when not hungry. That might sound oversimplified. And then add in some vegetables that are grown above ground, whether it be leafy greens or cruciferous, whether it's spinach or broccoli, Brussels sprouts, asparagus. And last but not least, this is the key that most of the groups kind of go sideways on. This is where we talk about whether we're going for therapeutic ketosis or we're talking about nutrient dense. Drop down the amount of cheeses and nuts that you're taking in your diet to the bare minimum that you need just to kind of fill in if you're going to die and kill somebody. But if you still got body fat to lose, you really want to minimize all those things. Yeah,
fat to sanity.
Yeah, basically. I've had days like this morning. I woke up and I had, extra bacon with my eggs just because I came off of a week of company parties where there's a lot more alcohol going down than I probably care to admit. But that throws your body into a place where now you're craving and craving and craving. So it took a little bit more to kind of get over that hump. And for me, that's a little bit extra fat will make the day fine. Tonight going to have a nice ribeye steak, and I air fry my bacon now. I don't know if you've ever tried that. Air fry.
What the hell is that?
Oh, air fryers are great. I should actually just bring it off the shelf and put it in front of you. But it's you throw 1.5 pounds of bacon in this dish, and you close it up, and the air fryer just does its thing. And the amount of fat that drops off of it, the renderings, 1.5 pounds of bacon maybe makes 8 ounces of bacon. So now it's like I basically created diet bacon. I've removed 6 to 8 ounces of fat off of the bacon. I can use that at any other time for cooking with, but it's just this salty, tasty goodness that I pick on throughout the day. It's a nice way to eat 1.5 pounds of bacon, but not really eat 1.5 pounds of bacon.
Okay, fantastic. So you've told me that you've got a coaching plan going on. So let's talk about that for a few seconds or minutes. How did that begin, and why did you decide to start it?
Well, for the past, so I think I tell people, like, I'm a musician also. I stopped playing out live, but I used to play about 50 gigs a year. And the way that it happens is you learn, the E, F, G, and then you learn B, C, D, and then you learn G, A, and then you go start a band. You just get those 3 strings, and then you're done. And in the same way, when I started the group and it converted over, I was the one that was telling people, oh, no, your weight's going up. You need to eat more fat. Get there. And then we kind of, switched it over the 2 years and evolved into a place where, we have in the beginner group, Fat Adapted Athlete Beginner, we have 5,000 members. Over at the athlete group, Fat Adapted Athlete, we have about 5,000 members. And from teaching these guys from my own experience, I was spending hours a day giving away free advice. And I said, you know what, I got to figure out a way that I can do this, make it meaningful to people, that I'm not, gouging the market, but, have a good, inexpensive plan where I can spread the word, gives me more time to do it and to help more people. So from all that training of helping thousands of people, actually in January, late January, I started the program to where now I take somebody through a good hour and a half to 2 hours where we just baseline everything. I find out everything from all these different markers that can change things, from PCOS to having autoimmune issues that will shift and move their caloric needs a little bit, to, I talk to people and they're like, oh, I only have coffee in the morning. But then when we really CSI that stuff, it's like, yeah, but it has this in it and this in it and skinny girl syrup. And then, they're doing it. I have Starbucks make it, so I don't know how much cream they're putting in. And, by the time we get done, it's like a 600 calorie coffee, and we're trying to, pull it all back in. So it takes the guesswork out. It's finding all the pitfalls and the red flags that I possibly can. And, out of 110 clients right now, I'd love to say I have 100%. I'd be lying. Nobody can, say that. But I'm probably working at a good 90% of the people are solidly moving the needle in the right direction. Again, because we're constantly tweaking and we're being accountable. And it's making sure that there's no guesswork. They're not saying, oh, well, maybe I could have this Quest bar or this Atkins thing or this no cookie. And, I kind of remove all the stuff that maybe is a little bit more complicated in the beginning, until they figure it out and they figure out their parameters of what they need to be eating.
Yeah, and we're also pretty skeptical of some of our fellow food companies in the keto sphere, and it's a fascinating sort of experience. I'll delve into that some other time. But, so yeah, eating out is a bit of a challenge for a lot of people, and you talked about how you can go to Starbucks and create a shake or something. I don't drink there anymore, just maybe coffee. But they end up adding so many calories, and it could go up to, was it like 400, 600 you mentioned? So eating out, how do you do that?
And that's part of the training. This is about learning a lifestyle, and part of that coaching process is, what do we do during difficult situations like barbecues or birthdays, and what do we do when it comes to eating out at a restaurant? What do we do convenience stores? And I let everybody know, it's not those 10 or 15 days a year that you're doing something special that got us into a situation that we're in. It's the other 350 that we're really tearing ourselves apart by eating McDonald's every day and Wendy's every day and the French fries and all the bad stuff from those places. So let's put it in perspective that if you have your child's birthday and you want to enjoy a little something, knock yourself out. Just know you get maybe, I want to make a book with 12 golden tickets that you actually got to pull one out each time that you want to use it. But if you keep it in that frame of mind, it doesn't become damaging, that you don't fall off the wagon. There is no wagon. When you go to a restaurant, just because there might be a little bit of something on the steak or a little bit of glaze here, that's not the thing that, if I'm eating salmon and it has just a very small amount of maple glaze, that's not going to make me fat. The fact that I'm overeating that and then I'm having calamari and some French fries on the side and mozzarella sticks, that's where the problem lies. So, go to the restaurant, use the menu as an ingredient list. And, I walk into Fridays, I'll order a pound of chicken breast and 2 cups of broccoli. That's kind of my go-to food. And if I'm feeling extra hungry, maybe I'll get a little bit of cheese on the side that I could use, or maybe a little bit of bacon. But for the most part, it's sticking with that. I'll go into a place and say, hey, salmon and spinach. They're like, sorry, spinach isn't an option. I was like, no, you got a spinach salad over here. You can maybe do some of that for me. And they're like, yeah, I guess we can. So when you use it as an ingredient list, you can really navigate. They hate me. They probably spit on my food, but they accommodate me as long as you're nice about it. And I don't make it into, like, I order my burger with the bun on. I don't care about taking the stuff off. I don't need something special for me. Other than, just getting a couple extra add-ons that maybe fit better for my diet.
And I think that's a very subjective sort of experience. Where are you into the realms of obsession versus are you going to have a good time with your friends? So I go with a similar strategy, and it's pretty easy to eat out like this because you can focus on something that has high quality protein. It's really easy to find, even in some ridiculous places on other faces of the earth. Have you done some sort of N=1 experiments outside of what you're normally doing with your diet and routine that you want to share here? Like, I don't know, heat shock proteins with Rhonda Patrick or something like that?
Yeah, I've done a lot. And, in the beginning, that's what one of the podcasters said, the best thing that you could do is do a lot of N=1 experiments. So every week was another 2-week experiment. But then, now I've come to learn that, there would be no no way that you could publish any N=1 experiment. It's a really bad experiment unless you had very, very close parameters to it, that you were only doing one thing and then you went back and did the other thing and compared week over week to see how that moved, and probably tried it with like 4 or 5 people, because so many outside things get in the way. There were times that I was taking, whatever supplement, and I thought I was getting a boost, but it was really just a change in my diet, that I was getting some more electrolytes that made me feel better. So one of them, taking branched chain amino acids. Everybody's like, oh, you're a runner, you need that. And, when you go into places like examine.com, and, there's a lot of great resources that you can check out, they'll tell you, there's really no science either way that says that turns the needle. But where the benefit happens to be is it's completely something else. It's because most runners are lacking in protein because they're either burning up too much or not eating enough. So that's where we got to be cautious, that when we go with that, if it works for me, and you got to do what works for you, you're your own person. It's like, no, we have very much the same rules. If you try to hold your breath for 10 minutes, you'll die. That's a very simple rule. If you overeat, in excess for 10 years, you'll probably blow up to a degree that you'll be overweight and die. And if you stop eating for, 3 or 4 months, chances are you will drop all your weight and you will die. It doesn't matter if you have stress or hormones. It comes down to, we have some very basic rules. But everybody tries to push those off to the side and say, well, I tried doing an egg fast and that worked for me. And it's like, it's not so much the egg fast, it's because you stopped all the other crazy stuff that you were doing that was probably causing you some overabundance of calories. I know I went a little bit astray on your question there. I tend to have a lot of different directions that I'll go in.
Yeah, but what about yourself? Have you done something crazy that stuck out with you?
For me, protein sparing modified fast, which I think is great. That's basically where I take in close to 1.5 grams to 2 grams of protein per lean pound of body mass. So for me, I'm 215 pounds and I'm about 180 pounds lean. So it means that I have to take in almost 300 grams of protein in a given day, but keep my fat down to under 30 grams and keep my carbohydrates down under 30 grams. You work that schedule for as many days as you can, between 5 and 7, and you just shred. It was proof that protein is not the deciding factor, the cause that your body stores it and it turns into sugar and then you get fat. It doesn't work that way. Taking 300 grams a day, I dropped 2% body fat and I dropped about 6 pounds. And I was still eating a good, about 1,900 calories to 2,000 calories.
Okay, so how's the fat loss journey for most people? Now, there's a common diagram that goes around everywhere, which is it goes like a wiggly sort of way down. Is that what you've noticed as well? And why do you think it's wiggling?
Yeah, we're just a big vessel. I can hold 3 or 4 pounds of water. I can hold 3 or 4 pounds of food. And I want to do I work with some different videos and I really haven't set them up yet, but I want to take like a bunch of hay and throw it in water and just show people what happened. And it's going to absorb all the water. It's just going to suck it up and be more than the weight that it started with. And the same thing happens when we eat loads of fibrous vegetables. We're going to suck in a lot of water and it's going to take its time. The transitory time for every food's different from mouth to tail. So how much water are we retaining from the food? How much is in the digestion process? How much has to process through the digestion process because it takes longer? There's so many factors involved that, but what I know that I'm eating lean, my scale always goes the same direction. And I like it when people, I have my clients, I say, listen, weigh in every day, weigh in every morning. As soon as you go to the bathroom, get your weight, but don't go day to day, take the 7-day average. And what's really important, like if you start at 200 and then you're like 198 and then you're 196 and then you finish out the week at 201, it doesn't mean you gain weight. Your trend line shows that you're dropping. All that did was show we weighed in, we have maybe a dehydrated weight and an overly hydrated weight, or we were carrying food because you ate later. There's also an app called Happy Scale that some of my people turn me onto that they're using that will actually develop the trend lines for you. Sure, there's Apple Watch and everything else under the sun will probably do that for you too.
Is it always a straight line, or is it just a curve rather than a straight line? What can people expect?
I mean, it's always, I mean, if I weigh myself in the middle of the day, I can be up 6 or 7 pounds heavier by the end of the night and then down 5 or 6 pounds at the next morning. So it's always going to be up and down. But, you know, I think if people are doing this right, not overeating on any one given day, you know, I don't see any, I never saw my weight not consistently take off that 1.5 to 2 pounds every week, you know, and that was based on the averages. Now throughout the week, you know, it's squiggly all over the place. Again, we're holding water, we're holding food, and there's no way to, you know, really measure that unless we x-rayed ourselves on a daily basis.
Okay. Sounds good. So, fat loss, man. A lot of people in the keto community come here for fat loss. So your website's name is All Diets Fail. Do you really think all diets fail?
Yeah, I mean, you know, diets, you know, in the term, not, you know, talking about the diet of what we eat, but talking diets, the traditional on TV diet, they all have a start and a stop point. You know, there's it's not lifestyle. So when you want to do something to lose 20 pounds and then you go back to eating the way that you're going to eat, I mean, yeah, it fails. So, you know, I'm a true believer that it's about lifestyle change and how do we integrate real life into it. And, you know, this, you know, I'll go back and pay homage to Vinnie Tortorich, you know, which was where I started my journey. And I kind of came full circle around to really thinking that, you know, he had it more right than most people that are out there. He said, you know, you got to figure out when to put life into living. This isn't about taking it all out. This is about deciding that if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it and I'm going to accept it and I'm going to move on. And then I'm going to I'm not going to go and pee on a keto strip to say, oh my God, am I losing ketones? Am I in them? Am I good? It's about, you know, doing that and then moving on. Then that's lifestyle. Then that's something that's sustainable. But I also feel that the sustainability of it is making sure to get the right nutrient balance for your body. If you're not getting the right amount of protein, so people will send me links and say, hey, this person like Jillian Michaels just said all keto diets are failures and da-da-da-da-da. And I'm like, well, I mean, yeah, in the traditional sense, doing a diet that was made for kids with epilepsy or, you know, old people with Alzheimer's, you know, by, you know, increasing your fat this much, decreasing your protein down to just the bare minimum for, you know, cellular, you know, repair, just a bare minimum, even slightly under, it's going to blow up sooner or later. It's not something that you want to sustain. You want to really lead with nutrient density and allow the fat to come in from quality sources, again, that will, you know, I mean, we need energy, you know, plain and simple. I don't know if you've ever heard of it was rabbit starvation. There's that study a lot of people talk about, you know, eating rabbit. There's no fat. You'll die at some point that you just eat rabbit because you're going to cannibalize all your body fat. You need some fat at some point. It's finding out when the right time is. You don't drive your car cross country and because it has a 30-gallon tank every day, just fill it up with 30 gallons. It's going to overflow. You fill up what you need. You know, so that's where, you know, having quality sources of fat that you can constantly go to is what we fuel on. And I eliminate the one or minimize the one that I can. Right now, I'm not doing any high glycolytic work. I have no need for excessive amount of carbohydrates. I'll average, you know, 10, 15, 20 most days. And on some days that I'm eating yogurt or some kombucha tea or something quality for the gut, maybe I'll be up to size 50, 55. And I don't worry. You know, ketosis doesn't mean you're going to lose weight. You know, that just means that you're processing fat for storage, fat for energy, whether it's fat that you eat or fat from storage.
And speaking of ketosis, if you try to increase those numbers, a lot of the times, one of the few relevant ways to raise ketones is by increasing your fat intake or exogenous ketone intake, which stalls fat loss in the long run or short run. But yes, the biggest problem with most diets, and this is the criticism that comes from the high-carb community, is how do you adhere to a diet? And I don't know about you, but a lot of people, when they get on a ketogenic diet, the first few things that they say is it's boring. Is that something you've noticed?
You know, it's just like everything. You know, we take time to learn habits. When I was a kid, I didn't want to brush my teeth at night, and I learned over many years of getting cracked across the face that you got to brush your teeth every night. Now I do it without problem. And in the same way, you know, eating a very specific way by making food simple, eating very simple food choices and not complicating it, really ensures success. The people that I come across that really that they try to make that new special dish, I mean, they'll struggle more than somebody. It's the reason that there's only one reason why I feel guys get this better. And sorry, I'm not trying to come from a misogynistic point to your female listener group out there, but guys are very easy. By throw a steak in front of them and they'll eat that and then they'll be done. Or throw like a pound of nuts in front of them, they'll eat that and they'll be done. They don't need the variety as much. They're just very simple creatures. We're simple brained animals here. Where women like to have that variety and like to have a little bit more interesting tastes to the palate and crunch and all that. And that's where things get complicated, because it's near impossible. If you want to know how difficult it is to measure out foods, try to measure out a tablespoon of peanut butter and tell me what you come back with.
Oh, yeah, man. The peanut butter is a total trap. And if you notice the whole texture, and there's actually sugar in it, by the way, it's meant to be overconsumed. And we talked a little bit about the vanishing caloric density, that concept right there. So these foods, you might think that they're just ground up peanuts. But if you do an experiment at home and grind up your peanuts there, it's a whole different texture. And it's not that palatable at all. But the stuff that you get in the stores, man, these just are insanely different. But yes, I've noticed that trend as well is that, people like to focus on, let's try this new recipe. Let's try these new foods. And then they load it up with a lot of sauces, and that just gets to be insane amount of calories, and you're thinking, I'm making it at home, now it's healthy. And so if you look at it from a historical concept, before Christopher Columbus went all the way and tried to look out for these delicious spices and different kinds of foods just so that we could cater to our taste buds and palates, we were living, at least in the Paleolithic era, it was very simple. We didn't have access to that many foods. So that's one skepticism I draw towards anybody who comes up with a new diet or something that is from the Paleolithic era or any of those eras. It's like they had limited choices. They led a very simple life. Their focus was on, hey, let's go out there and hunt an animal. Let's survive from the next bear attack or something like that. They were busy and constantly moving. Now you've created this perfect storm where you're watching Netflix and consuming the highest amount of caloric foods that you can find, and they're meant to be hyper palatable, meaning that it's really easy to get them. Now you have this impossible situation where you can't lose weight, and what do you expect? You expect people to go get obese, and that's what's happening. That was my rant, man.
Yeah, but no, I mean, you nailed that. When you first started that, I was thinking in my head, I got to work the word hyper palatable into this, and I immediately think, for me, my trigger trying to do a fathead pizza, I cannot make that unless I have a girlfriend over, because I will eat the whole thing. I need somebody to pick up the extra half of that. And that's what we're seeing now. People have more access to food 24/7. We move less. All those things come into play. It's not just one thing. It's the fact that we're constantly pounded with sugars that, we could say that our fruit is now, modified to a degree where there's more sugar in it than, me, again, 49, growing up as a kid, I didn't want to eat a grapefruit without, 2 or 3 tablespoons of sugar on top of it. It wasn't something you could do. Now I can chomp into one and it's, they're sweet. They're flavorful.
Exactly, and there's this beautiful mouse study that I saw about a year ago. It was an Ivor Cummins presentation, and Gabor, he recently did a presentation as well, and it's a repeating sort of rhythm. So they took a bunch of mice, separated them into 2 pieces and 2 groups, and one of them had the regular palate, and then they took the second group and they gave them this, so they basically gave them different kinds of foods, but when they grounded them up, they overconsumed them. I don't remember the exact specifics on the top of my head, but the base note here is once you process foods, you can cause them to be overconsumed, and that bypasses the composition of the macros within the foods as well. So this is the same thing as we noticed when someone's trying to eat a donut, for example. Flour is gross. Sugar, I have yet to find one person who's pounding down sugar like crazy in teaspoons. And fat, oil is gross. But once you combine these things together, now you create the perfect storm. And same goes with pizza. Delicious cheesy stuff and this great doughy pizza, even if it's from almond flour, you're going to consume that. In fact, that's a lot more calories. Fat is 9 grams of calories. And no matter what the naysayers say, calories do matter. And you're going to have to fight this war.
Yeah, it's funny. Going back to that study that you talked about, this is one of the things I talk to all the clients about. They want to drink a protein shake or get some fast, easy way to consume it, and there's no thermic process to it. You know, when we're not a baby bird. We don't need something ground down and put in our mouth so that we can then have it almost pre-digested before we take it, because we will pull more nutrient from it, which can be of a value, but that means we're going to absorb more of whatever that was. You know, when you're trying to break down 300 calories of chicken, you're almost using 100 calories in the digestion process, and you know, then the impact is not the same. So yeah, it's as much there is calories in, calories out. Everybody will shame me for saying that, but it is, but it's bound by a hormonal equation, and it's bound by a macro equation. But ultimately, at the end of the day, I could feed you 1,000 calories of Twinkies and get you to lose weight. It's just going to be a terrible time. What we do is we try to round it out by giving you the right food so that you're not going to be hungry all the time, and you're going to have the right energy levels. That's really what it comes down to. It's picking your battles.
Exactly. And so, yeah, I think the dietary advice needs to move away from eat less, move more, to eat smart, move smart. Find out a good groove and find out good people to follow and just stick with it. And adherence, like we were talking, is one of the biggest breakers of diet. And a lot of people just get into a diet, oh, I'm going to lose weight for some wedding or for some event. You have to take it in a whole lifestyle sort of thing. And the simpler, the better. And so, man, we could go on and on about this kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's interesting. It's good, definitely good to be able to talk with you. And this is what I do. It's now my life is, I'm in the tile industry. I work in the floor covering business, setting up distribution on the East Coast. So from 5 o'clock in the morning until about 8 o'clock, I'm on the telephone with people from Australia, people from Ireland, people from England, trying to compensate for the time shift there. And then same thing after I get done with work at about 6 o'clock, I'm doing the same thing from like 6 to 11, not straight, randomly keep the hours open. But this is all I talk about now, which keeps me rooted, that I know, like this morning when I drank my Monster energy drink that has sugar alcohols in it, I know I was spiking myself up. I know it was wrong, but I'll go back, I'll apologize to my followers, everything will be fine, and then I'll go and do it right the next day. And it's an evolution for all of us as we find out, just keep our journey going.
Hey, I don't apologize. I drink Monster on the live streams. The 0-calorie one. Is it the white one? Is it the white one that you get at everywhere practically, or is it the other one?
So I had, and I'll try to keep this story small. So I had somebody challenge me about protein turning into sugar. So I ran back to my hotel room and I was like, I got my test strips there. I'm going to record a live video and just show him that, why I'm eating 300 calories of this, or 300 grams of protein, that everything's perfect. I'm producing loads of ketones and my blood sugar's down. And I did the ketones, it was like 0.2. And I was like, maybe that was a bad strip. I do it again. It's like 0.2. I'm like, something's wrong. And then I do my blood sugar and it was up to like 120. And I'm like, what's going on? Because I didn't eat anything for like 6 hours. I had 2 Monster energy drinks and those things just spiked me right up. So, it's these things that we think are for free. They're not for free. They definitely can create an impact. The question is on whether or not, it impacts you. You can, you're a healthy guy. You're at that place now where you can fudge the rules a little bit. You can bend them. But if I was, 300 pounds, I'd have to be a little bit more careful on what rules that I bend or break.
Sounds good. Yeah, man. Ketones, ketone testing. I have my little gripes with that sort of entire process. One of the gripes that I personally have with the testing period is one of the guys said, okay, I got this ketone testing meter, and now I can, so ketone levels seem to go down with time, right? So, for example, if you started off with 1 point something, they're going to go down as you adapt. So the guy brought this interesting paradox, and he said, am I getting better adapted at ketosis because my ketone levels are low, or am I getting kicked out of ketosis because my ketone levels are low? So,
I was going to say, I think when you're checking P strips, you're definitely, that's an overabundance of ketones your body doesn't need. The ones that are flowing through your blood haven't had a choice yet of what they're doing. But it's great when you learn how to make a lot of ketones, and then your body dials that down because it doesn't need a lot. It just needs what the brain, heart, few organs can use. it's the upregulation of fatty acids to the muscle, which is where the fat adaptation comes in. So, you can continually get better and better at that every year. There's tests that you can just basically jump on a machine, and that's again the Peter Defty stuff. He's the guy that supplies the athletes for things like that. That will show that guys in year one that were tested, like Zach Bitter, I think when he first did the faster study was like in the 1.5-ish range, and then in future tests he was up in the 2.2 range, which was unheard of. We never thought anybody could get up over those numbers. So it's an always bettering process that you can do. So if you don't have fat adaptation, the ability to use fat for fuel, you can make it all. That's why people pee out a load of them in the beginning. Their body doesn't know what to do with them.
Yeah. Well, it's a rabbit hole in my personal opinion. It just gets more complicated over time. So when people start our journey, do you recommend people to start testing ketones right away?
No, you know what? I really want, my new approach to this is how simple can we get it? I mean, you got to keep score of the game. I get that. So weigh on the scale and, try to do a little bit of macro checking to make sure that, your fat is slightly under your protein most of the time, or try to keep your protein up a little bit and keep your carbs down. So just until you get the training wheels off and figure it out. But as I said, as simple as it gets, get your fat attached to your meat, get it through your eggs, have the little bit of extra butters and oils that it takes to prepare your foods and to stay satiated. Get some green leafy vegetables, cruciferous vegetables, minimize the cheese and nuts. Do that 2 to 3 times a day whenever you're hungry. Don't eat when you're not hungry. Only eat when you are. Stop before you're a little full. And that's the prescription. That works all the time. There's nobody that won't work for.
Okay. Let's talk at the end over here about the carnivore sort of experience. How's your performance changed when you moved from like the traditional variety and you've moved more, like you said, you were moving towards a little bit more meat-heavy diet. Have you always been this way, or was this a transition, first of all?
No, so the transition, and it took a lot of figuring out the electrolytes. I was out running, and I was trying to do the different cornstarch powders without naming a name that are those energy givers and things like that. And, because I thought that I needed carbs. Then I'm trying to eat, bacon on the run and do all these things because I'm trying to, and nothing was working. And it really came down to that I was just lacking electrolyte balance. And once I got my electrolyte balance and I learned how to warm up properly, which is key so that you just don't go straight to that sugar burning mode, I was fine with carrying on a good 20 to 30 beats over my aerobic threshold. Where you don't have it, I mean, you have a set amount of glycogen. So when you try to go in that glycolytic range too long, you're definitely burning up more than what you're taking in. You got to fuel with some sugar. There's nothing wrong with fueling with some quality carbohydrates. I'll eat some plantain chips. I'll have a little bit of honey in my water. This way I'm getting different sources. I'll have them cooked in, coconut oil with some salt. I'm sure your energy pods would probably be a good thing because the higher quality the fat, the less impact it is to your stomach on the runs. I know a lot of the girls in the group that do the 100-mile ultras, they'll constantly fuel on different sources of quality fat. So, back to specifically answer, I don't have a fifth gear. That's what you lose. Your fifth gear, maybe you can run that all-out sprint for maybe a minute, whereas before you could push that for a lot longer time. You had them more often. Now I got to be very careful. I'm not a sprinter. I'm 215 pounds. I'm not going to go out there and try to race somebody as quick as I can. But trust me, my body has enough glycogen on board to get the job done. I was doing something called Yasso 800s, which is in a running world. It's a way to time your marathon by running 400 meters on a track and then cooling down for a quarter mile and doing that and repeat. But that 400 meters is like all out as fast as you can go. And man, after doing like 7.5 miles worth of that, I was tanked. I was gassed. I don't have that sugar capacity to do that. I can fuel, but once you become metabolically inflexible because all you do is fuel on fat, you lose that sugar engine. Sugar doesn't become jet fuel. Now that I train somewhat different and I make sure to accept, good quality carbohydrates at the right dosage at the right time, my body's flexible. I can turn the sugar engine on and just, man, it's like lightning. It's a pretty cool thing. I mean, it's a high octane fuel. We just don't, I quote Zach Bitter quite a bit. He said, "There's no reason for somebody to go to their office first thing in the morning, sit all day, and start that day with a bagel. They haven't earned high octane fuel." He says half of his runs he doesn't even earn that high octane fuel. You have to earn that. You got to burn down some glycogen before you want to decide to put something back in the tank.
Yeah, and going back to what we recommend, or a lot of people in our community end up doing, is they'll, for example, take the pods and they'll consume it before they're in workout. And the rest of the day, they'll focus on meat. So that's the strategy. Even I use that strategy. So is it good to consume fat if we were to use it for a workout or some sort of run? Is it better to use it during, before, or after? Or what's the protocol here?
I mean, I don't know the answer, but for myself, it's always been before. When I wake up first thing in the morning, like I'll have some fat about an hour before my workout. And then when I hit my workout, there's not enough in my stomach that it's, again, it's dosage, it's having the right amount, it's having the right quality. And then that keeps me full until like 11, 12 o'clock. So then, there's things that are very compliant with what we do. And, not really talking about the fat pods, but, for me, like I take most of the clients that I have, and when they say, okay, well, first thing in the morning, I'm like doing butter and heavy cream, and I take that out of their coffee because, they need to wait until they're hungry first, until they then start consuming calories. But for the other subset of people, I'll make sure that they have some of that in the beginning because that keeps them compliant with the diet. With the diet, just because it's some calories in the beginning, if that will stretch their first meal until 12, 1 o'clock, man, well, that's a win. That gives them more than enough time where they're digesting, that they're using a lot of stored body fat. It's in my view, it's the right way to do it, but I don't have a bit of science to back that up, which is kind of, when I spout off about things, I try to make sure that I've always read the science and have a little check mark in the yes or no column.
So one of the trends we've started noticing is when people go on a high meat sort of diet or approach, they automatically end up having a very similar to a 16-8 eating pattern. At least that's what we've noticed in some of the anecdotes. Is that something you start noticing when people switch to a diet like this, or any good quality diet, that they switch to some sort of a time-restricted eating on their own?
Yeah. So earlier on, that's one of the things that drew me into this. Again, Vinnie Tortorich said that at some point you're going to just be busy and not eat, and all of a sudden you're going to be like, I didn't eat. Because in our world, it's like a heroin addict trying to wake up, and every morning they got to have that hit. They don't realize a world without having that hit first thing in the morning. In our world, we don't think that we can make it 3 or 4 hours without some sort of dose of sugar. We've always, if we don't, we get hangry, we get upset, we start to crash out, everything falls apart. So that was the first change that I knew that I was becoming more fat adaptive. Your body shouldn't know the difference of you eating a pizza from the front door or getting one out of the freezer. Whether you're getting it from your mouth or you're getting it from storage, your body's being fed. So that's really what happens. So as that fat adaptation, your body learns how to use fat for energy. That's when everything changes. That's where the magic happens. And then, I tell people that, I'd like you to eat between 12 and 6 or 11 and 7, but I don't do that for the old insulin theories of like insulin rising and then dropping. And that's not such a big deal. If we're at a slight caloric deficit, it's really about just having adult rules. As adults, we don't have rules. We do what we want.
Here's the thing, though, just to let you know. I mean, there's this guy called Keto Savage. He's doing it. He's doing the exact opposite, and I think Dr. Dominic does this too. Is they're using a relatively higher fat and lower protein approach, but they're still keeping the caloric restriction. So it seems to work for them quite well, and that's how Keto Savage got all the way down to. At least that's what he's telling. That's how he got the way to 4% or 5%.
Yeah, but still, energy balance.
Energy balance matters. Yeah, but I think their protocol was that okay, you can have fat if you feel really, really hungry. So I think they're in the camp that, fat still has a lot of satiety. So that's why I gave a little bit of a pause. So I was like, okay, maybe that approach works too. So I'm open to both of them. And the thing is, if it works, it works.
Yeah, but so where I've pulled that together, and it was one of the things, I get tired of answering the same things over and over again on Instagram. So I just create some snarky meme and put it out there. And I threw those up now at a free download section in the website that people could just go and get that. And it's the explanation of what is therapeutic ketosis and what is nutritional ketosis. Now, therapeutic ketosis works because we're lowering insulin responses to the point that hunger becomes nil, and you're not going to be hungry, so you can deal with caloric restriction. You're also very sparing of muscle. You're very protective of muscle when you're in that state. But you better be working out. If you're taking in 1,000 calories of energy, it doesn't matter fat or carbs here, or fat or carbs here. You better burn that. And for people like Keto Savage, who's like going a mile a minute, or Dr. Dominic D'Agostino, these guys are working out hard. They're fiends. They're able to burn up that additional energy source. I mean, at the end of the day, we got two macros. We got protein and we have fat and carbs. Which is your protein is your repair and rebuild, and then we have your energy sources. And our body's not stupid. If it's going to go through the process of digesting those energy sources and converting them, it's not just going to get rid of them. It wants to store them for later use, and we have to create later use. That's the key. Most people try to eat all the fat that they want and then up the carbs or do whatever they're going to do, but they don't create later needs for that energy source. Yeah. And as long as you do that, you can lead with fat easy. Myself, it's easier. I can get full with a lot of protein. The fact that I can eat 2 pounds of meat a day, and sprinkle in some spinach and a few other things is just, that's where, I say all diets fail. I actually I came out with another one of those things that say, the diet that works is, and then I list them all: high fat, low carb, low fat, high carb, medium fat. It doesn't matter. It's whatever fits your lifestyle. And everybody's going to have a different way. Some people are 20% of the population can eat carbohydrates without problem. They're not getting triggered. That's that classic when we break down the endomorphic, mesomorphic, so on and so forth. 20% can handle the carbs, and those are those lean, skinny people that they can eat a couple thousand calories and just will never put on any weight. Guys like me, I look at calories and I just want to gain. I go to the gym, I want to gain weight. Me dropping down to being a runner. I'm not built to be a runner. I was never a quick guy, never will be. For me to turn in 9.5 to 10.5 minute miles took me years of work to get there. I spent a lot of time in the 13 to 14 mile an hour range, which is that's why it took so long. It took so long to run it. So, okay. Yeah, it's the diet that works for you. There's a lot of people that are doing this right. There's a lot of people that have found a way that works. The problem that I have is that when people try to say that there is only one way, and I know that there's multiple ways, but I know ultimately it's going to come down to energy use, and you have to just fit the one that works with the right energy use. So saying to, half of the heavy set followers that, that a Keto Savage may have, eat all the fat that you want, that's great. But he also finishes it up with the message that he wants you working out and he wants you putting in the time so that you can energy balance. And I think at the bigger picture, we're all about energy balance. Just because he leads with fat and drops the protein, and I lead with protein but drop the fat, that's why I don't have to do cardio and I can get abs.
And I think one of the things that he hammers on is that once you get to a really low amount of body fat percent, where he's doing contest prep, over there at that point, he claims, at least he mentioned on the podcast, that it keeps him sane to consume more fat than just focusing 100% on protein. So maybe there's some science or reasoning to that, and maybe people can utilize that as a tool once they get to that sort of stage. Rather than sticking to the normal protocols that are there, they could follow something similar to his. So who knows? Maybe that's a great viable strategy at that point. But then, like you said, these are people that are outliers to some extent. And even though they're trying to replicate and coach and help other people, so it'll be a fun challenge. I think everybody's got their groove going. And it's very humbling for me as well, because I started off as keto thinking, I can eat as much fat as I want and I'll be fine. But I can't. I mean, for me as well, for me, it's not that bad because I'm at this position where I've been slim my whole life. But the problem here is it's deceiving, because it could also mean that I have less fat that I can store and I can quickly max out and I wouldn't know what's hitting me next. So that's a big trap for people like myself who find it difficult to gain weight. So Peter, should we add a few final notes, or should we wrap this up and go to your plugs?
Yeah, I mean, I'm good if you're good.
I'm good, you're great. So let's tell people how they can find you and what services you have to offer.
Sure. So, everything links through alldietsfail.com. There's an Instagram link. There's a Facebook link. Go to the Fat Adapted Athlete and Fat Adapted Athlete beginner groups on Facebook, which is a great free resource. That's the library. That's where all the information comes out, and there are librarians there that will help you through it all. Great pin posts that will tell you start to finish how to do the process. And then when you want to take it up that next level and get some coaching, the alldietsfail.com, you can sign up for some coaching. It's very inexpensive, but it's a way to take the guesswork out, and coaching gets results. That's pretty much been the motto of what we do. And when I get a hold of somebody and we get them all dialed in, I can't tell you how many people say, I've been stalled for 2 months. I've been stalled for 3 months. I can't make this happen. And it's like, boom, within the first week, we got the scale moving the right way. And we have their hunger in check also. That usually takes only about a week and a half before they're good. So you can find me there. And then on Instagram at the Fat Adapted Athlete.
Sounds good. And I give you a solid thumbs up because I know that these protocols that you're trying to push here do work, and there's strong testimonials and science backing it up. So I know that if someone goes to your way, they're going to get some results. So thanks, Peter, for all the work that you're doing. You are quite an inspiration for many people and a wonderful guest to have, and I really love your honest and brutal attitude. You don't give an F. Thank you for listening to the show. You can visit us at ketogeek.com to check out our premium keto-friendly and low-carb food products, including our infamous energy pods, made from the best ingredients we could find in the entire country. We also recommend signing up for our newsletter at ketogeek.com/signup, where you get exclusive discounts, rewards, product announcements, and the latest content we are working on. You also get a 10% discount on your entire order when you sign up. Go to ketogeek.com/signup to join the low-carb playground.